Welcome back everybody to another MOTOBOB video. Now we've had loads of exciting new and updated retro bikes announced for the upcoming 2024 model year, and so here are our 14 picks in price order ascending. At the most affordable end of the spectrum, we've got the Royal Enfield METEOR 350 at just a smidge over $4,000 starting price. Now granted, it isn't the most exhilarating riding experience at 20 horsepower and almost 200 kilograms, but it's still a nice looking bike with a comfy riding position, and you can't really argue with that price. New for 2024, they've got some neat color options which give it a bit more of that retro touch. So for just another couple of £100, you can choose from Aurora Green, Aurora Blue, or Aurora Black. And not only do you get the sort of two-tone paint job, but also a bit more chrome to the hardware and spoke rims. And again, they help to give it a bit more of that old-time look. The only thing about that bike that might not be to everyone's taste is the riding position, which is a little bit cruiser-esque. It's low in the seat and slightly forward on the foot controls. And so if you like something a little more upright but still retaining the classic styling, then there's always the new Bullet 350. It's based upon the same platform, so you've still got the 20 horsepower air-cooled single, and it's got roughly the same running gear as well. But the key difference would be the riding position, with a seat height that's 40mm higher, so 805mm, and that's going to make it feel much more like a regular street bike. Then again, another £450 or so will get you one of the most anticipated new bikes of the 2024 model year, and that's the Triumph Speed 400. Now this is a brand new liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine from Triumph and their new manufacturing partners Bajaj, and to me the 40 horsepower sounds a lot more enticing than the 20 of the Enfield, especially when you combine it with the slim wet weight figure of 170 kilograms. All round, it's just a much more sporty looking package with a 4-piston radially mounted front brake caliper, a chunky upside down fork, and a pair of 17-inch wheels which should turn much quicker than the 19 front and 18 rear of the Enfield. For the price, it just looks excellent, and it's also got that signature Triumph style too, and so definitely at the top of our list to test ride in 2024. Also alongside it, you've got the Scrambler version for another £600, and this one sits a little bit taller at 835mm, and with that you get more suspension travel and also larger diameter wheels for a little bit of off-road ability. Still, I'd say it's primarily a road bike though, but it's definitely a good option if you're looking for something along these lines but you're a little bit on the tall side. Now in at 5, we've got the BSA Gold Star, a bike I was lucky enough to test ride last year and I thoroughly enjoyed. It's pretty much along the same lines as other retro bikes, and especially close to the Enfield 650 twins like the Interceptor, but the thing that makes it stand out is the big 650 single-cylinder engine which gives the BSA its own sound and feel. It is surprisingly smooth though, but it still has loads of thump and torque, and so definitely one to demo if you're into that sort of thing. For 2024, the key update is this Shadow Black version, which is pretty much completely blacked out, and that's something we've seen from plenty of other retro manufacturers in the past with bikes like the Triumph T120 Black. I think it works equally well here, and it's a nice stealthy alternative to the more punchy standard colors. Now I just briefly mentioned the Enfield 650 twins, and that's a lineup of 3 bikes that currently consist of the Interceptor, which is an upright all-rounder, the more canted forward Continental GT Cafe Racer, and the more laid-back Super Meteor 650 sort of cruiser. But it looks like for 2024 there's a 4th variation on the way in the form of the Shotgun 650. Now this is a limited edition version which is a preview of the more widely available standard models, and while the fancy paint job almost certainly won't be carried over, the rest of the bike gives us a really good idea of what to expect. Basically, it looks like a more sporty and stripped back and slightly more modern looking version of the Super Meteor, and I particularly like the interchangeable solo seat or rear rack or passenger seat, and they say they've built the entire bike with customization in mind, so expect to see plenty of custom builds commissioned once they've fully launched it in the next month or two. Now before we get on to the next one, I just want to say a massive thanks to today's video sponsor, and that's Cardo. We use their PackTalk Edge communications devices, and in my experience they're the best on the market. These things are absolutely rammed with features, but the one thing that stands out to me is the DMC connection, which is far superior to to regular old Bluetooth. You see, you can pair with up to 15 riders in a group and up to a mile between each, and the more riders that join, the better the connection gets. Also, the group can auto-heal, which means if someone drops off and then catches back up, they don't need to manually pair again, so it's super easy to use. Honestly, it's massively improved my group rides, but also there's awesome audio quality courtesy of their JBL design speakers, and so even if you're just using it to listen to music or a podcast on your ride, it's right up there with the best. On top of that, they've absolutely nailed the noise gating on the microphone, so if you are chatting to a mate, you don't get any of that annoying or distracting wind noise coming through their microphone. And so genuinely, we love using Cardo products here at MOTOBOB, and I thoroughly recommend checking out the link down in the description to find out more. And also down there, you'll find a discount code specifically for my viewers. So once again, a massive thanks to Cardo for their support. And with that, back to the bikes. Next up, this beauty from Moto GUZZI is the V7 Stone CORSA, which is basically a sporty, almost cafe racer version of their existing V7. Now, the V7 is already a great bike in my opinion. It's got that distinctive transverse V-twin, which makes it stand out from other mid-capacity twins. But also, you get a really big fuel tank for this genre. It's 22 litres, and then you get the shaft drive at the rear, which requires a lot less maintenance, and so actually, this bike makes for a really quite practical choice. But this particular Corsa version gets a half fairing, bar end mirrors, and a cafe-style saddle with a bit of a seat hump, plus that very nice looking silver and red paint job, and I think it makes it look much more sporty than their other models. Also, getting in on the fancy paint jobs, we've got Triumph this year with their new Stealth editions for most of their Bonneville models, and I actually got to paint one of these tanks at the factory a month or two back with a sort of black fade over a silver metallic, topped off with a different coloured candy clear coat for each of the models. Mine turned out totally fine, not exactly perfect, but the ones that are painted by a professional definitely give a cool new look to the bonnies, and I especially like how it looks on the bobber, which probably most suits that sort of custom vibe. Now, these start at £9,395 for the Speed Twin 900 as the entry point, and then you work your way up on price by adding 600 quid to the price of the 900 models and 800 to each of the 1200s. Also new from Triumph for 2024 is the Scrambler 1200X, which is a more accessible version of the XC that preceded it. The idea is to lower the seat height by 20mm to 820 to make it feel much more manageable to a wider range of riders, but also they've managed to drop the price by a few hundred quid. Now, naturally, to do that, they've had to lower the spec a bit, so suspension and the brakes and the dash have all had a little bit of a downgrade, but Triumph say in their testing that it performs just as well, so I'll definitely be looking forward to finding out if that's actually the case when we get to borrow one. Now, it's also worth adding that the XE version, which is taller and a little more off-road biased, also got a bit of a tweak for 2024, and again, the price has dropped versus 2023 by 400 quid, so down to 13,295, and as you can imagine, they've also done that with some component swaps like the Showa and Olin suspension being subbed for Marzocchi. Now over to BMW now, and this one is pretty much completely new, possibly my pick of the list too, and that's the R12. It's basically a baby version of their R18 Cruiser, but to me it looks a lot more appealing. Maybe it's because of the slightly more compact dimensions, or perhaps the more original styling that seems to be truer to BMW than the big chromed out Cruiser look. But either way, it's one that I'm looking forward to riding, and at £11,990 and 95 horsepower, it looks like a good alternative to something like the Triumph Bobber, which is closer to 13 grand. At the same time, they also launched a more sporty upright version called the R12 which of course replaced the outgoing and similarly named R9T, and with this one the suspension is higher in spec, there's more power, it's lighter too, but the downside is the price is quite a lot steeper at 14,420. If you want something truly sporty though, then a great option is the Yamaha XSR 900, which gets all of its engine and chassis from the thoroughly modern MT09 Naked. Now this is a great bike to ride, and I absolutely love the CP3 inline triple, which gives you close to 120 horsepower and loads of mid-range punch. I know a lot of you don't consider this bike to be a retro, but look, here's the dictionary definition of or designating the style of an earlier time, and I'd say clearly the styling of this half-fed XSR 900 100 GP, which is a new version for 2024, draws from the Marlboro-sponsored Yamaha race bikes of yesteryear. In my opinion, it looks absolutely fantastic and should be equally as good to ride. In at 12, we've got a bit of a revival from MORINI with a new version of their Milano Naked. Now, this one does have slightly old school vibes with the round headlight and the typical MORINI tank shape, and I'm expecting this updated 1200 V-twin that now makes 125 horsepower to give some of the feel of previous Milano iterations. Now, granted, there is some thoroughly modern stuff on this bike too, like the part steel trellis, part aluminium frame, so I guess you could say it's a bit of a hybrid. No price on this one as of yet, but given the previous gen Milano was close to £14,000 a few years back, I'd be expecting at least 15k and up. Now we're closing in on the top end of this list now, and it's a sad farewell at number 13 for one of the staples of the retro market, and that's the Triumph THRUXTON. This is the final edition, celebrated with a competition green paint job and hand-applied gold lining, and once all these are sold, then this is the last you'll see of this fantastic motorcycle. It is a shame because it's one of the best Bonneville powered bikes to ride. You've got plenty of punch from the engine, a great chassis, and also top spec components from Brembo and Öhlins, and it's all capped off with a thoroughly sporty riding position with those low clip-on style bars. But perhaps that was actually its downfall, because it's not really that comfortable after an hour or two, unless you're pretty flexible, but then again, most of the people buying this bike probably aren't. Thing is, even at 15 grand, it can't quite top this list in price order ascending, and that honour actually goes to Norton with their limited edition Commandos. They're celebrating 125 years of the company, and there are 4 special paint jobs on the existing Commando to mark the occasion. So you've got the Enerjet, the Manx, the Transatlantic, and then my favourite, the 588, and each of them will cost you £18,999. Thing is though, they're pretty limited in number, with just 125 made across the whole collection, and so I'd expect them to still sell out pretty quickly if they haven't already. As always, I'd love to know your pick from the list, so do let me know down in the comments below. I'll also leave you with my recent full rundown of the THRUXTON Final Edition if you haven't seen it already, so do give it a click and give it a watch. Hit subscribe if you've not already to see more of the latest motorcycle news like this right here on YouTube. Many thanks for watching today, and I'll catch you in the next video.